Hey friends, I'm Greg Nettle, and I serve as president of Stadia Church Planting, where we start thriving, growing, multiplying churches for the next generation. Welcome to the Church Planting Podcast. Man, this is an incredible episode that we're going to be sharing together. I am Jay Pathak. Jay is the National Director of Vineyard USA. And if you know anything about Vineyard, you know they're committed to multiplication. He's also the lead pastor of Mile High Vineyard in Denver, which he and his wife Danielle planted in 2001, and is just a rapidly multiplying church throughout Arvada and beyond. He co-authored the book, The Art of Neighboring, which if you haven't read that, you need to make that a priority read. Anyhow, really excited to have Jay Pathak, Multiply Vineyard, and the Church Planting Podcast. Well, I'm really excited to welcome my friend Jay Pathak. Jay, welcome to the Church Planting Podcast.
Thanks, man. It's good to be here. I love being with you guys.
Jay, I have to ask this because I know you've had a stint in Columbus. I think you actually grew up in Columbus, Ohio.
I did.
So are you a Buckeyes fan?
I bleed scarlet and gray.
Oh, yeah.
Ohio State University.
The Ohio State
is
Buckeyes.
my alumni. Yeah, I have a degree in philosophy from the Ohio State University.
So you were a graduate of OSU.
Oh, yeah, man. I lived in Morrill Tower. So I could see into the football games. I was on the 30th floor. I could see into the football games live from my room, from my bedroom.
With a very useful degree in philosophy.
Super useful. I'm great in coffee shops. I'm awesome. I'm the right guy for the coffee shop conversation.
Oh, I'd love that. We'll have to do that. Jay, you're now the National Director of Vineyard USA. And I mean, I know you and I know your story. I know you don't just bleed scarlet and gray, you bleed church planting. Mm-hmm. And so National Director now, but you're also lead pastor of a church. I don't know how you do it all. But I mean, it's been a journey. How did you get involved with church planting to start with?
Well, it wasn't a plan for me. It wasn't by design. I was studying logic and ethics through philosophy at Ohio State. I wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
And I'd had a nice, an incredible encounter with the Holy Spirit. That's how I came to know Jesus. And then I was in the Columbus Vineyard. And I didn't even know. I didn't even thought about how churches start.
Was Nathan your pastor at the time?
Rich Nathan is my pastor.
Oh, yeah. I love Rich Nathan.
And has been, really, honestly, to present. I mean, he's like a spiritual.
And he has a heart for and passion for multiplication as well.
Well, exactly. And so I'd seen a bunch of my friends come to know Jesus. I was discipling different guys on campus. And there was a lunch. And they gave a really small shtick in an announcement. Hey, some of you might consider, you've never thought about how churches get started. You love sharing your faith. You love helping people encounter lives with Jesus. And you've just wondered, I wonder what church planting is. We're going to have a lunch.
Okay.
And I went, well, first of all, I'm in college. So if you'll feed me.
Yeah, fair enough.
I probably would have gone to the women's, luncheon, anything that you'll feed me. And I went and they described it. They said, this is the profile of a person who might be a church planter.
And it was you.
And I listened and I went, I've never considered a life of ministry, let alone church planting. And they said, okay, so we have this article you could read. And so I read an article, I think it was Bob Logan's stuff at the time. And I read this article and I thought, this is really interesting. This is where my heart tends to go. And we were starting what turned out to be young adult ministry, mostly by just building small groups and multiplying them.
Yep.
And then kind of did service. And so and then of course people start saying that back to you, like, well, hey, have you ever considered this? This seems like something. So in a very real way, which you just described, it was the culture of the Columbus Vineyard, which was overtly evangelistic, leadership training centric, that sort of put that as a possibility. I'd never even considered
it. So the seed is planted. I got to ask this: your parents. I mean, at some point you had to go to them and say, "Hey, I'm not going to go into law."
Totally. Well, and that was a challenge, not just in relationship to church planting. That was a challenge in relationship to just even any kind of ministry. You know, that wasn't on the radar for them. And then I was dating Danielle, who is now my wife, and she had already told me really explicitly, I'm not going to be with a pastor. She had pastors in her family.
All righty then.
So it was pretty much only obstacles, I guess is what I'm trying to say, to end up where I am now. Because she was like, why would I? I've seen families in ministry. I see the impact. I'm not doing that. And then my parents, of course, honestly, very honestly, to this day, nearly every time I talk to my dad, he mentions that I could still be a lawyer. There's still time, you know. So yeah, it was only obstacles, but you know, the way these things work, when you just keep moving towards things, the fruit and or the momentum speaks for itself. And
you know,
me, it was the
Jay, I had a mentor once who said to me, he said, Greg, if God calls you to be a pastor, never stoop to be a king. And that's not a knock on any other profession, because obviously we need all those professions. But I am so glad you answered that call and moved into what I believe is an incredibly high calling. And I know the kingdom's different. Let's fast forward then. So you convinced Danielle somehow to stay with you. And where was your first church plant?
Well, we moved. Our first one was the only one. It's the church I'm still at. You know, I in my life following Jesus, I've only been in 2 churches. So, I was in the Columbus Vineyard. We moved on the 9/11. I saw the towers fall in the Ryder truck place where we were renting our truck. Yeah, and you know that caused us to pause. I just turned 25. So, I mean, you know, I'm the smartest I've ever been then.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've never been smarter than at 25. And we had tricked a few of our friends into coming with us on this grand adventure. And, you know, we drove our truck across the country. You know, at the time, the vineyard gave $3,000 to every church planter.
Oh, jeez.
And 3,000, and by the way, that's 3,000, a one-time gift. So some of you are like, oh yeah, a month. Wow, you barely made it.
Yeah.
No, one time. So my joke is that I think the finances got us to about Kansas.
Yeah, exactly.
Renting the truck and getting the gas. So it was a different era. It was a different time when people did that stuff. So we moved to Arvada in Colorado, had a really clear call to this city that's a northwest suburb of Denver. And the job that I had lined up wasn't there when we got here. The apartment we put a down payment on was no longer there. And half of our team, all their jobs were gone. If you remember, right after 9/11, the economy crashed. So there's a hiring freeze. So, you know, eventually we moved in with this group of guys who had a house with my wife, until we found an apartment literally by the train tracks. And I ended up going back and getting a job waiting tables that I had sworn I would never do again. And we started a small group that slowly grew. We were never in the Outreach magazine.
Fastest growing churches in America.
You know, no, we were on the other side, but our commitment to reaching lost people, helping people who didn't know Jesus come into a life with Jesus, discipling them, training and reproducing leaders, over time built a church. And it took years and years. So when, you know, people ask you, when did your church plant start? I'm like, well, we moved 9/11, but you know, what most people understand to be a church, we didn't have that for years.
Yeah.
I mean, years. I mean, we resembled way more of what looked like a cult than a church. Because, you know, like how
I've been there.
Well, I'm just being honest. Like how many people are like, you know, you got to meet my pastor. He works at P.F. Chang's. He's awesome.
Exactly.
You know, that's not a great lead in, but there's something about the way we build a sort of resiliency, a steadiness, a commitment to evangelism, discipleship, There was never the flash. I'm always confused when I'm with church planters now. And they're like, oh man, our funding's not what it was. So I guess we just can't plant the church. I'm like, well, are you committed to the place? Are you committed to the people? What was the call? And if the call was to be a part of the redemptive history of your city, you're going to do that however you need to do that. I mean, that's what you've been called to. So for me, I went to some of the larger churches, because we didn't really have a thing to do on Sunday. So we go to that. And one of the larger churches in town, one of the most pivotal moments for me is, we built a young adult ministry. There's like 1,000 people in Columbus. So I'm in this church, and it's a great church, and I have a crisis. I'm like, why am I even here? There's a great church right here in our city. So I grabbed the pastor off the stage. I said, hey, man, I'm here. We're thinking about planting a church. I'm trying to figure it out. It's not going that great. We're leading a few dozen people to Christ, and, they're bringing their friends. So we have 4 or 5 small groups. Maybe I should just work for you. Or maybe I should just help you build a ministry. And just like this, he looks right back at me and says, did God call you to plant a church? And I said, yes. He goes, then who would I be to stand in the way of God? I don't want your help if you've been called to plant a church. I need to support you. Which honestly puts something in me now. We have multiple churches around the city. I think I've tried to take that up. I exist to help people fulfill the call that God has in their life. So one of the meetings I always take if I'm asked to meet is church planners. I'll get coffee with you. I'll talk about what's in your heart. Mostly because I don't want to see you die, but also I want to help figure out how to support you, because church planting is what transforms cities, period.
So, Jay, I want to just camp just for a moment on the call idea, because I've had 3 crystal clear calls in my life. One was to Dublin, Ireland, to plant a church when I was 23 years old. One was when I ran out of money there and had to make a decision. I had a very crystal clear call back to Northern Ohio, where I spent the next 25 years. And then the next call was to Stadia. And I have always said, the call has kept me in the game. I go back to those early years of church planting. And if I hadn't had that call, and so how, you're national director of Vineyard, and you work with Stadia and Discovery. And one of the most important things, can you speak just a little bit more to people who are out there and who are trying to figure out, am I called?
Yeah. Calling comes through all kinds of doors. I'd refer you to any number of better resources. And what I'll say in the next 3 minutes, Os Guinness has an incredible book on what it means to respond to the call. I'd recommend that. So for us, we had a really clear calling to a place. That's not always true.
Right.
Sometimes you're called to a place. Sometimes you're called to a type of people. Sometimes you're called to a certain kind of model. And I do believe people can have any of those 3. My argument would be is you probably need 2 out of 3.
Okay.
to hold it, right? Yep. You got to be like, we're reaching goth kids in this city or whatever. We're reaching young professionals through house church development. I don't really care which of the 3, but you probably need 2. If you have all 3, well, now you're locked in.
You better go.
Yeah, you're locked in. And you're probably locked in for a long time. And what I would say, and this is the thing that nobody wants to hear, but this is what I want to say. The clearer the call, usually the higher the cost.
Oh, nobody wants to hear that.
I think it's just true.
I think it's true too.
We had such a clear call to the city. And I remember some of you would know the names John Wimber.
Yeah.
Started the Vineyard movement. I had, John had passed. I had lunch with Carol Wimber, and I was telling her our story. We were about to move to plant, and somebody set up the meeting, and I'm like super excited. This is like royalty for a little weird tribe. And I'm having lunch with her, and I'm laying out the story, and my story to the call is so bizarre. It's really prophetic. It was really clear. Didn't really know her about it. Anyway, I'm laying it all out for her, and she's eating a salad, hardly looking at me. And I'm thinking, this is kind of a cool story. I don't know why she's not dialing in, and I finished the story, and I said, so what do you think? She said, well, it's a really clear call. I said, yeah. She said, why do you think you were so clearly called? by God? I said, I don't know, because I'm supposed to go plant a church. She goes, no, people are called to plant churches all the time, but it's not that specific. It's not that clear. It's not that direct. Why do you think it was so clear and direct? I go, I have no idea. Maybe because I'm faithless, like I needed more clarity.
Yeah.
She goes, no, that's not why. Do you know why? I said, I don't know why. Then she looked up and she slammed her fork on the plate. And she said, because it's going to be hard.
Wow.
And it's going to cost you everything.
Oh, my goodness.
And you need to know that you were called. And I remember walking out of that little lunch thinking, what a grumpy old lady. Like, I've never even spent time with her. Like, I don't know what was that? That was too much. It was too much. It was too much.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, I came back to that. I mean, no less than 100 times. She was right. So listen, if you're a pastor, you're a planter, you're like, Lord, I want a clear call. I want a crazy call. Careful what you ask for. Because when it's crystal clear, you're accountable in a different way. And I understand not everybody has that. So, some people are like, I don't know, I just have a heart for whatever, and I'm just going to try. Great. Lord be with you. I'm not saying that that's worse. I'm just saying, man, that gets tested. True calling gets tested.
Okay. So you stay there for years.
Till now. Yeah.
Yep. So how long's it been?
We moved 9/11. So I've been here 24 years.
Congratulations. And so somehow in that time, then you are developing a multiplying culture now within your own church. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that's come about?
Well, I'm often fairly simplistic. So here's my simplistic way of understanding this. Multiplying churches usually have leaders that multiply. So I've always spent my life trying to lead people to Christ, make disciples, train leaders, and multiply them. That's what I want to do with my life. So because that's what I do with my life, I mean, right now I could list the 15 guys I'm trying to lead to Christ and their families, one of which we just baptized, my daughter's friend, and all her family came. I mean, literally last Sunday.
So cool.
So that's just our life. So when leaders live that way, they build leaders that live that way, which build churches that multiply that way. So for us, when we started our church, the first thing I said to our leadership team was, I'm praying about the next 5 churches we're going to plant. And they're staring at me like, well, we have 14 people.
Exactly.
Who have no jobs.
Yeah.
We have no money. You wait tables. This is insane. I said, now listen, I'm not saying we're doing that today, but we're going to build this thing as though we're planting churches. So I don't know if you ever read the business book, The E-Myth. It's one of the books I have church planners read all the time.
No, I don't think I've read it.
Basically, the E-Myth is the entrepreneurial myth.
Okay.
That it's entrepreneurs that build great businesses that are amazing forever. His basic argument is that's not true. That basically, if you want to build a company that will last, build a company as though you're building 50 more. Because building multiplication into and sort of systematization that allows for replication creates a level of intentionality that makes you healthy from the beginning and helps you multiply managers and leaders in a particular kind of way. And so that's what we did. We were building a church as though we were going to multiply it from the jump. And it turns out if that's in your genetic wiring or your intention, that's what you do. So when pastors are like, I don't know, if we could be 400 people, we could probably plant a church. I'm like, if you're 4 people, you can multiply. But you have to decide that as a part of just how you do your life, let alone how you're going to build a church.
So I don't want to lose this, Jay. The E-Myth is by...
I think it's Gerber, I think is his name. So it's an old business book that was used by franchise people. Like, how do we build franchises? And so it's a business book. So if you read it and you're like, this has nothing to do with Jesus, it doesn't. But it's basically trying to build a mentality in people who are building businesses to build in such a way that you can replicate and give away, because the temptation for entrepreneurs is to pull all of the momentum and power and sort of authority and creativity to themselves, instead of systematizing that and giving that away in systems that train and develop leaders and managers that can build the business. Well, the same is true in church. We don't need a bunch of superstars that can just like do everything.
Right.
Everybody just sort of fawns on them. Really good leaders. For me, when I meet a pastor, there's so many talented humans in the world. My God, there's so many talented people. I was trained by my pastor, Rich Nathan. Look at who's around them. Notice the next layer. Are those the kinds of talented people who are building other kinds of talented people?
Oh, that's good.
Because whatever your capacity, that's given to you by God. You don't get to decide, how much gifting or favor you have. You don't decide the talents. That's given by God. You do get to decide how you're going to invest those talents and the degree to which you can multiply what has been entrusted to you. That is up to you. But you have to decide you're doing that no matter what level of ministry you have. You're leading a small group. You're leading a small church. You're leading a worship ministry. That's not up. You don't get to decide how awesome you are. God generally does that. You do get to decide how much you're going to replicate that. That is up to you. But that's a mentality. That's a way of understanding your job, that you're a discipler who builds leaders. That's your job.
This is incredible. Now so you're 24 years in now, Jay. What are you most excited about with church planting now? What are you seeing? And you go, man, this still gets me up in the morning.
I mean, for me, it's always going to be evangelism. The end. Like, there's nothing more evangelistic than church planners. So for me, when I meet church planners that are like, I'm super excited because we have the theology that helps everybody the most because we're like so smart, my confidence that they'll plant a church that's useful is really low. I don't even care even if I agree with their theology.
Yeah.
But when I meet planters that are like, there are just lost people that need to know Jesus. And I think we have a particular way of adding to the ecosystem of this city. There's been people that have been here. They're reaching folks. We're a different kind of flavor. We're another net in the water. I will do anything to help them. I mean, we just help plant, I'm a vineyard guy. So we're egalitarian, charismatic kind of lunatics. I've helped plant Presbyterian churches. I've helped plant Acts 29 churches. If we did a theology test, we would not agree. Like, there's 100 questions. We're going to disagree on like 80.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the 20 that matter.
Yeah. Yeah. The essentials.
20 that matter.
The essentials.
We're in a complete lockstep agreement. We would die in a ditch over those 20. Well, then so what? Like, I'm here to help you. Like, I will stand in front of Jesus, and I want to be able to, this part can make me cry. I want to be able to stand in front of Jesus and say, Arvada is without excuse. The gospel of Jesus Christ has been proclaimed and demonstrated in such a way that the hope of life was held out. I can't do that on my own. I need a lot of people to do that. I need a lot of different kinds of pastors and churches that I can lock arms with. And, we might fight over all kinds of stuff, like, why do they have a fog machine? And I'm whatever. Fine. We'll argue over, because we're friends. And I'll be like, dude, if you buy another pair of sneakers, I'm going to kill you or whatever.
Yeah.
But they're reaching people I'm not reaching. So listen, those are my brothers. That's my team. But that's because I understand the call is particular to a place. And so, so I'll help anybody to do that. And I'm excited about evangelism. So anybody that's leading people to Christ is my friend. Anybody's training leaders is my friend. And that they might do it in a way that makes no sense to me, I have a lot of latitude for.
Jay, we get asked all the time, who do you work with at Stadia? What kind of churches do you work with? And we intentionally made it pretty vague about 13 years ago.
Yeah, you mentioned the vineyard last. Like, here's all our friends, and then you whisper.
And there's vineyard. No, we just say, you know what? We want to plant healthy New Testament churches. And you know what? It comes down to those 20 things that you were just talking about.
That's right.
And it makes all the difference in the world. Jay, you're the author of The Art of Neighboring, which, that's been around a while now, and it still continues to impact so many people. Thank you for writing that. It impacted me as well. We still use diagrams out of that in our discovery event today, and it's fabulous stuff. And who's your one, and do you know your neighbors around? I mean, I know all your stuff, man, and so deeply grateful to you for joining us on the Church Planting Podcast today. I'm going to ask you one last question. Somebody's listening to this right now, and they're going, man, I hadn't thought about, I was Jay. Say something to them.
Just ask for God to put his really big heart in your little body for the most marginalized people that surround you. It turns out if you lead enough people to Christ, you teach them to be disciples, and you train and reproduce leaders, you'll do ministry the rest of your life. Don't get caught up in all the other games. You don't have to be everything. You don't have to be the cultural analyst and the theologian and the. Focus on people, lead people to Christ, make disciples, train and reproduce leaders, and you'll live a really exciting life the rest of your life.
Thanks for listening to the Church Planting Podcast. The Church Planting Podcast is part of the Stadia Podcast Network. To find more great episodes and to see how Stadia can help you start thriving, growing, multiplying churches for the next generation, be sure to check out stadia.org/podcasts.